Eskom has announced a stage 4 load shedding from 2 p.m. this afternoon until 10 p.m. tonight. Let's get reaction from Matthew Parks, who's Cosatu's parliamentary officer. A very good afternoon to you, Matthew. Good to be talking to you once again. So your reaction to this latest load shedding announcement from stage 2 to stage 4?
I mean, look, it's extremely disappointing and frustrating. Eskom is one of the greatest threats to rebuilding the economy, to saving companies, to saving workers' jobs and salaries. So we hope the Eskom management will sort it out quite quickly. It's one thing to have it for a few hours, but we can't afford it to continue beyond this. We really hope to see Eskom's management ramping up its investment in maintenance, as well as to expanding generation capacity, because that is the way we're going to get out of this continuous load shedding. But look, we have to get it sorted out because it's a threat to companies. The companies can't produce, they can't sell the goods. They will retrench workers. Workers will go home unpaid. So we hope it will get sorted out soon. We hope that government will also intervene to help Eskom to address these crises because we simply can't afford to continue down this road.
And really, as we know, Eskom and the provision of power is the backbone of being able to have a functional economy. Your reaction then to the GDP numbers that were just released?
Look, I mean, it's a difficult one. I mean, we appreciate any GDP growth is welcome, but the fact is the economy contracted by about 7% during the course of the pandemic and the lockdown last year. I think we have to bear in mind that we have a 40% and rising level of unemployment, that thousands of workers have lost jobs, lost wages, that thousands of companies have closed. So it really is once again a wake-up call to government and to business to ramp up the investments into the economy. We can't afford to continue down this road. We have an economic recovery and reconstruction plan that everybody has agreed to, but we need to see government and business honoring their commitments and ramping up their investments in the economy. We don't have the luxury of time to continue to talk, to pontificate, to philosophize, to shift blame. We need to save every job we can. We need to save every company we can. And to be honest, as Labour, we're quite disappointed by how slow government business have been in this regard.
And on the back of the unemployment figures as well that have come out and the GDP numbers, but also remembering that we are actually coming off from a very low base when it comes to the GDP numbers, what do you believe is the best solution economically for the working class in South Africa?
Look, number one, we have to save every single company and every single job. I think first, the critical things that can be done quite quickly. The Reserve Bank should lower the repo rate further. That's going to help make credit more affordable. That's going to provide cash into workers' pockets, cash into companies, help them to survive. On the economic recovery plan, we've put at the heart of it a buy local campaign from us as consumers, as workers, but also to companies, to government, to buy locally produced goods. That's not new money that they need to print somewhere or find somewhere. It's just saying instead of buying imports, whether it's clothing or furniture or food or cars from overseas, let's buy locally produced goods. It's about government getting serious around tackling corruption and wasteful expenditure because, again, we lose about 10% of our budget every year, billions of rands because of that. That's money we could have spent into the economy, stimulating growth. It's also about what kind of economic and social relief measures can we give. So we've been continuing to push on the Unemployment Insurance Fund as Cosatu. Let's give money to workers who are not able to work to keep them afloat. We'd want to see the banks also come into the party. We'd want to see Treasury and the Reserve Bank also come into the party in that regard. We have to fix Eskom. The economy can't work without reliable and affordable energy. Equally, we need to get our ports sorted out quickly. We've seen the competitiveness of our ports, Durban, Cape Town, etc., sliding down not only internationally but in Africa. If we can get our ports functioning properly all the time, our manufacturing goods, our agricultural, clothing exports, etc., can be got into the markets of destination much faster. We've got to sort of transnet so the goods from the farms or the factories can get to the markets. We have to sort of Metro Rail. We were shocked last year to see Metro Rail literally being brought to the stand of collapse with very little action by government to fix it. If workers can't get to work on time, how can companies be productive? Workers lose wages. I think for us, those are the fundamental things that need to be done. We all know what they are, but it requires politicians and officials to show a sense of urgency and discipline and not spending time on Twitter and misbehaving. It requires businesses to show a level of sacrifice and commitment to rebuilding the economy at large.
Now, the repo rate has remained unchanged for some time now. Why specifically the request for 50 basis points?
Look, the Reserve Bank has always said they want to keep inflation between 3 and 6%, and we understand we need to keep inflation low because workers are the ones who can least afford to see the small little wages being eroded by inflation. But inflation has plummeted by half over the past few years. It's gone from 5.5% a couple of years ago to about 2.8% now. It's likely to remain in that trajectory going forward. If you lower the repo rate just by a small amount of 50 basis points, it immediately puts money into workers' pockets. I mean, they spend less on the home loans, the credit loans to stores, etc. Similarly to businesses who also have loans, it immediately puts money into the pocket at no cost to government or the banks. It puts money immediately there. It helps for them to spend that money. So workers have extra money in their pockets. They buy food, they buy electricity, they spend money on transport. That boosts the local economy. Similarly, if companies have more money in their accounts, they don't need to retrench. They can spend more on the goods, getting the stock out into the stores. So it's a win-win thing. It's a quick thing which doesn't cost government, etc. And the fact that inflation is so low, it gives the Reserve Bank ample space to do it. And right now, when your economy is in its worst recession in 100 years, that's when we need to be throwing every single thing at it. And many economists have agreed with us that there's sufficient space with inflation and within the repo rate to reduce it more. But equally, it means the commercial banks too must show a little bit of patriotism. They can reduce the interest rates because they often charge excessively high levels of interest to consumers, especially the poorer you are, the higher the interest rate they charge you. And that really, it just compounds an already very difficult economic situation.
Mr. Parks, what is the general sentiment now when it comes to unions specifically? Do you feel that you've got an adequate enough voice? Are your suggestions actually being heard and being taken to account by those who actually hold the power and have the ability to either implement or even consider your advocacy?
No, yes and no. I mean, it's a mixed bag always. We might raise 10 demands, 5 of them might be achieved, but that's 5 we didn't have before. If we were to compare the situation of Cosatu to those outside of the alliance, they would be likely to achieve 1 of their 10 demands, and often if they do achieve it, it's because Cosatu had raised it as well. But it's not a bed of roses. We know we have to push hard. That's the nature of the economy. That's the nature of trade unionism. You have to fight for what you want. You might not achieve it today or tomorrow. We've been fighting for years, but slowly we managed to achieve the victories. And it's a struggle with fighting. As long as we continue to improve the lives of workers, to provide relief to them, we will manage to do it. A year ago, the Department of Labour wanted to close the UF COVID-19 TERS relief in June last year. We pushed that we must continue to extend it, and that managed to increase the money released from the UF from 40 billion rand into workers' pockets to almost 70 billion rand. We managed to get the Eskom social compact agreed to that we had drafted by government and business. We managed to help drive the economic recovery and reconstruction plan. We managed to achieve a national minimum wage, which has seen the wages of the poorest workers, from farm and domestic to retail and security workers, etc., lifted up. So there are positive achievements we managed to achieve, but on many macro fronts, we have a huge amount of work to do, from 40% unemployment to collapsing state entities, municipalities, to workers being retrenched or abused. So there's many challenges we have to keep fighting, but as long as we're making progress, then we'll keep pushing on those fronts.
Matthew Parks, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. He is the parliamentary officer for Cosatu, putting everything really into perspective, especially for unions, that it certainly is not a sprint, but a marathon.